Okay, we are live on the One Lap Down Facebook page, and we have a very special guest joining us from RCR. That's right, Richard Childress Racing. P.Kelley is with us. JP, first and foremost, man, how are you doing today?
Oh, we're doing great down here. It's a beautiful, rainy, cold day, and welcome North Carolina. We're just getting after it, getting ready for the season.
I love to hear that. Now, before we go into questions, I'm curious what you were doing before the call because we offered a time slot, and you're like, I think I gotta go watch something. Was it practice, or do you like oversee what the guys do?
Yeah, so I drive for the pit practices. So we had a practice this morning, and we've been working our pit boxes. So we usually work on those till about noon or so. So I was just trying to build in some extra time in case we ran over, trying to get stuff ready to go for the season.
Oh, that's so cool to not just like you hear about it on other radio or interviews, but to talk to somebody who's actually been doing it is really really neat. Now, your particular position, I guess, is the fueler.
Yeah.
But do you guys have to know all the other positions on a pit crew as well?
So we need to be aware of what's happening at all times, pretty much, and be able to do a lot of the different jobs. Just because you don't know if somebody's going to go down or if somebody's going to get sick or whatever. I mean, I used to be a carrier too, so I can do that. And then it's usually just a good idea for people to know how to do things just in case something goes wrong.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's where I don't know how much of this you've listened to, but Joe's he's wearing his old school shirt. He's been following this for a long time, and for me, very, very new to this, and excited to learn a lot, get to talk with you all, and especially with your experience. So, kind of what led you to this position? We talk about kind of your history of getting into this business and this career. What led you to this?
So overall, the career, I've been a fan my whole life. I grew up watching racing and watching Dale Earnhardt, Jeff Gordon, Mark Martin, and well, didn't really root for Mark Martin though. Just followed it my whole life, and I started wanting to be an engineer back in high school. So I went to school for that, and then went into consulting after college. And it somehow ended up down here on a tour, and it was the RCR All Access tour they do, and we were down at the pit department, and one of the guys on my team, Lamar, he I didn't know him at the time. He looked at the audience and said, "Hey, who thinks they can hang a tire better than me?" So I looked at this guy, big dude, big athletic dude, like, probably not. There go my hopes and dreams. And all of a sudden, my left arm shoots up because my wife grabbed it and put it in the air. I said, "Oh crap!" So here he looks at me and says, "Oh, it's your turn." So I go up there, kind of watch what he did and put the tire on, and they had me do it a couple more times, and didn't really think anything of it. I was like, "Man, that was one of the cool. Well, that's really really cool." Now it's time to go back to Martinsville and get ready to go watch the race. And all of a sudden, one of the coaches is walking beside me and says, "Hey, what do you think about coming down here and work out with us for a couple of days here pretty soon?" Cool. I said, "What?" I thought he was joking. And he's like, yeah, my name's Eric Wilson. I'm the pit crew coach here. Here's my number. Call me or text me whenever you want to come down. And sure enough, we went back up to Martinsville and then back up DC where we were living. And a few weeks later, came down here and worked out. And Ray Wright, the coach here, and Wilson, they said, "Hey, what do you think about coming down here to do this?" I said, "Wow, yeah." So we packed up and moved from Northern Virginia. She was moving along with the career. She said, "Okay, I'm good. We'll go. I won't be there." And my job let me work remotely for the longest time, and I came down here and did this, and here we are.
That's so cool. And I keep seeing these guys that that are down there in the pits. Like, these are athletic dudes, and
yeah.
I see a lot of them have like D1 or NFL football experience, all of that. Were you an athlete growing up? What was your kind of athletic experience going in?
Yeah, I mean, I just played up to high school. I was very, very average baseball and football player. So I didn't play anything in college. Just kept working out and water skied a lot and just kind of had fun doing stuff, but didn't really compete anything past high school. But yeah, most of these guys are elite athletes who do this. I mean, we do have a bunch of D1 football players. Ray, our pit crew coach, he was a D1 baseball player for LSU, won a national championship in 2000. One of the guys on my team is a Super Bowl champion.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, we have a lot. So I'm on the low end of the athletic spectrum down here.
Wow. Well, you detailed how kind of sudden your path to getting to where you are was. Is there more of a typical path for some people who maybe the former athletes who are trying to get into it? Is there a school you go to? Is there a way like typical training as opposed to just going to an event and almost lucking into that a coach was there and saw you do it?
Yeah, my path was definitely a lot different than a lot of people. I mean, so a lot of this stuff is word of mouth. So some guys will be brought in, and then they'll bring other guys in, or the coaches will see somebody. They'll get resumes or whatever. They'll look through resumes and they'll see something that pops out to them and says, "Hey, maybe we should try this guy out." NASCAR has a Drive for Diversity program, which has brought in a lot of guys. They'll recruit from different colleges and bring those guys to combines and then work them out, and then they'll select some guys there. You'll see some NASCAR press about that yearly. So there are a lot of different paths to get here.
Related to those that you are around, obviously we know NASCAR is a very long season, so the off season generally is pretty short. But what about the daily, I guess, before 2020? The daily commutes and then the off seasons. I mean, you guys are pretty much a team, right? I mean, you stick together pretty much all the time. Is that how it works?
Pretty much. I mean, so when really the team aspect, we have a practice lot during the week. Right now, we work on the pit boxes as a team. We'll normally work out together as a team, and then when we're on the road, we fly as RCR pit crews, and then we'll have our own separate team vehicles or two vehicles for a team, and then we'll just kind of go off that way and then end up as a team at the track, and we'll go out to eat together, all that kind of fun stuff. So we operate as pretty much a 5-man unit most of the time.
So that had to be awesome, right? Growing up a fan and then getting to work on the team and getting to all these racetracks across the country and traveling. I can imagine it's an exhausting experience, but pretty cool to get to see all those cities and those different places.
Yeah, I mean, you grow up watching this stuff on TNN back in the day, or ESPN back in the old school ESPN or ESPN2, and then you just get to go to all these places. Because we only went to Bristol, Martinsville, and Richmond growing up. That was it. Because I'm from Luray, Virginia, and those are our home tracks pretty much. So getting to go out and getting to go to Auto Club or go out to Phoenix. I mean, we went to Phoenix. It felt like a lot last year, but we really didn't. It wasn't that too many times. It was just normal 2 trips. But just getting to go all the country and see everybody, and it's just really, really cool.
So obviously you had an idea of what certain racetracks were like growing up, but since you've been able to travel to these other places in the country, is there one that really sticks out to you as being a favorite from your perspective, another track besides those 3 you went to growing up?
I mean, so I think the first big race I did was the 2019 Daytona 500, and getting to go to Daytona. I mean, I've been in the stands a couple times in 16 and 17, and 17 is when I figured out that's really what I wanted to do, was being on pit road. I thought it would be a really cool thing. Getting to be on pit road for the Daytona 500 in front of, I guess, 103,000 in the stands, and then however many people are in the infield, man, that was so cool. And just seeing the cars roar by, and being able, we weren't that far from where we actually sat, where our season tickets were for the 500. So it was pretty cool being able to be on pit road and then look up to see where my dad and his buddy Monty were, where they were watching, and seeing where we were just 2 years before that. So that was really, really cool. Darlington's also a really cool place to pit because you just have the history, and then especially with the Southern 500 and the throwbacks from last year, that was pretty cool getting to see all of them. So I'd say those are probably two of my real favorites.
Yeah, that was Joe's favorite paint scheme we talked about last week, was those throwback ones. And
yeah,
And that was fun. Like I said, kind of this year with NASCAR and the Xfinity Series really being the live sports to watch. They were the first ones back in May. We talk about that a lot, and that's what got me into it. And Darlington really stuck out, getting to learn a little bit more during that race.
Yeah.
And you talk about we talked about traveling and then getting to be at that Daytona 500. I mean, your nerves have got to be through the roof, right? With all of that energy and all of that. What do you all do? Because in our realm as a coach, we talk to our swimmers about mental preparation, and we do all these things. All my peer coaches, we talk about that. What are some things that you all do? Visualization, preparing for that moment.
So I think we do a lot of visualization work. I think it's not really, we don't do that really as a team or anything. It's more just, you just do it in your brain. You visualize a stop of what's going to happen. But the night before, you kind of visualize how stops are going to go. You kind of run through scenarios in your brain. At least that's how I prepare. But pretty much for us, it's we practice a lot, so you have that down, and you have your chemistry with your guys, which is so important because how pit stops move and the choreography of them. If you don't know what the other guys are doing around you, it makes it very difficult. So when you have your team and your group, and you have that synergy, and you can really operate as a synergistic unit, it's awesome because everybody you can feel where your other guys are going to be. So that's one of the really big parts of it, and just knowing that your guys have your back, and that they have yours, and it's really cool thing when things go right. And pretty much the other big aspect of stops and calming those nerves is just the race day routine, and just doing the same thing over and over and over again. Get to the track, get the stuff out of the hauler, go to the pit box, set up the pit box, get your tires ready, all of that, and just doing it the same way almost every time. That makes things go a lot smoother. And if you can make those work things go smoothly, then the stops should go pretty well too.
All right, I have two questions related to the crew itself and then the pit box. My first one is related to the pit box. What track is the toughest to get cars in and out of? We saw, Chase had an issue, but his Jack Man was kind of almost won the championship for him. It seemed like late in the race. Is that typically the track where there's most issues, or is there another one that is kind of a struggle bus?
Martinsville's very tough, especially if you're in the corners, and it's such tight. They're all tight spaces, and the pit road just is overall so tight. It just makes things difficult. I know our rear changer was almost hit a few times by the guy who was pitted behind us last year or in the fall race, just because it's so tight. I know we've had one guy get hit and get spun around and hit back into the car one time a couple years ago. It's just, you just keep going. It's not anything that really you don't feel it really. You just keep going. Indianapolis is tough, especially for the guys who run out front of the car, because that pit, you're going so fast on the pit road speed. I think is 55 there. It's super tough and super tight. It's designed for Indy cars, and even in Indy, those guys get hit sometimes too because it's so busy, and with Indy being the 2.5 mile track, you have so many cars in the lead lap, it makes things extra difficult because you have so many cars coming down at the same time on pit road. So it just makes for a super congested area, because you saw what happened, I think, on the 12 on the 4th of July race. It was just a big bottleneck at the back, and guys got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of alluded to it. My next question related to pit crews. How often do you all work with, chat with other divisions, other series, IndyCar, F1, those guys? Is there any type of chatter, or is it really just a siloed NASCAR world?
It's fairly siloed. No, I'm not talking. No, for us, it's fairly siloed. We don't have the IndyCar connection really. I would think that with Penske, being that they have NASCAR, and with IndyCar, they probably have a little bit more communication than we would. But with the way the stops are going to be changing in the future, I would think there might be a little bit more crossover between just trying to lean on different organizations and different series for information. Now people at the top, the higher levels, they might be talking more than we would, but I don't really know more than that.
Yeah, I guess, and that's kind of talking across like all of those different different venues and avenues of racing. What was the biggest thing for you that you learned being a fan and then actually getting involved with the sport? What was something that might have surprised you or was different than you thought of when you were following it as a fan?
I think kind of just the rush on pit road. I mean, you get the rush. I mean, you go in a regional championship baseball team and you gotta get a game clinching hit. I mean, that's a rush. And going on pit road, that's kind of the same thing. I don't know if I ever really expected it to be what it was when I was in the stands, because when you're watching from the stands from TV, it looks so smooth when it's done right, and it doesn't really look like people are moving that fast. You can see they're moving fast, but it doesn't look quite as intense. It's kind of like watching football from the stands and versus being on the field. Being on the field, you can hear the hits, you can see how fast everybody's moving. It just makes a big difference, and I think perspective plays that big deal with stops too. I mean, if you ever have a chance to go in the pits and be able to watch, or from up on the box and be able to watch a stop, you can hear, you can feel, you can really see how people are moving so quick and how heavy everything is. I mean, how heavy the tires are, the gas can, and the car itself with the jack man having to jack it up. I mean, it makes a big difference with that perspective. And when you're in it, it feels kind of slow. It slows down just like a car accident, or when you compete in any other sport, it'll slow down for you. But when you realize how fast it is, it's incredible.
That's cool. Yeah, that's got to be a rush to feel all of that, feel everything going on down there in pit.
Yeah,
that's cool.
What are the qualifications to be a fueler? Because I've been told you have to be at least a certain height to put that thing up there in the car. Is that correct?
Not exactly. I mean, with some teams, it probably is a requirement to be a certain height, but I think that you have to be a certain weight. You have to be over 200 pounds at least, most likely. In most cases. Now, there are definitely exceptions to every rule. Probably had to be about 200 pounds at least to be able to handle that can. And you got to have a certain level of core strength and vertical push strength to be able to hold the can the correct way to be able to plug in, because the cans average between 92 and 95 pounds, and all that's vertical weight above your shoulder pretty much, because the neck really doesn't hold. I mean, you don't have a whole lot of weight down in the neck that's in your left bottom hand. So there are definitely certain strength and speed requirements too, because you have to be quick to be able to get to the car. Now I'm not running out in front of the car anymore like I was carrying, but you still have to be able to catch the car at a certain time. You're trying to go for, as soon as the car stops, you need to be plugged in. That's usually the deal, unless you're doing something different like one can or something. Now that's a little bit of an exception. But if you have a full fuel run, you got to be able to get 2 cans in there. So you have to be quick enough to be able to catch the car the right way, be able to hold the can up the correct way, and then be able to throw that empty can back and grab a second can and put it back in. And now that's another important part, is you really need good behind the wall guys, who are the road crew guys, the engineers, to be able to help you out with that, because you have to be in sync with those guys too. Those guys make or break you. They are the rock for this whole thing, because they have to be able to hold the can up. They have to be strong enough to be able to hold that can up for you to be able to grab it and go. And the other guy has to be alert enough to be able to catch the can and not have it go all over the place and break something. So those guys are definitely the unsung heroes of the pit stop too. They don't get enough credit for.
Wow. So in the moment, I mean, how hard is it to communicate with those people? I know you've got headsets and all of that stuff down there, right? But it's got to be tough to communicate. It's got to be pretty well rehearsed, huh?
It's rehearsed. It's pretty much rehearsed. Now, usually the crew chief will be on the radio, because he's kind of the eye in the sky for the stop. He'll be on the radio. If the car goes to the line, he'll be yelling back, whatever. So you don't service it over the line or whatever. But usually you're just going, and there's really not much communication at all. Maybe a quick yell or a quick hand signal, but it's so loud it's hard to even yell at anybody to say anything. So that's where I really rely on my behind the wall guys, especially the engineer. I had engineers handing my cans in all year. So if they ended up not needing something, they would just not hand it to me. So, okay, back off.
Mm-hmm.
During the race, we know we have monitors down there. You guys can watch the broadcast and things of that nature. But are you all able to hear the full radio conversation to know exactly what's going on? Or is it just one of those things where the crew chief turns on one channel, and then we wants to talk to y'all, he can turn on to a different channel?
It depends on it really depends on what the team has for radios. Now, if they have multi-channel, then we'll be on a certain channel and scan another. So we can hear most of everything that's going on.
I have one more. Sorry, I mean, didn't mean to cut you off. That was kind of a question to get me through because I forgot my original question. My original question was going to be related to practicing those stops. You mentioned that you were the driver in practice today, but obviously you guys have to know how it's going to be with the actual driver in the car. How much time is spent with someone like Ty Dillon or Tyler Reddick in the car versus someone at the garage just doing it for practice?
So do you mean how much do they come down here to practice?
Yeah. How much practice I mean, this year no one got practice. You just obviously showed up at the track.
Yeah.
But in a normal year, what's that ratio like?
So those guys will usually come down before the season starts, just dial themselves in, and usually they're pretty good to go after that. Now sometimes they'll want to come back and maybe tune up, and maybe after the first few races, if something's not quite clicking right or whatever, they'll come back down and just work for a little bit. But usually they're dialed in after doing maybe a couple stops in the pit department, or we'll go up. There's an old practice pad up behind our cup shop that you can see on old YouTube videos where they'll come in and they'll practice for that too, because it's more of an outside view and probably a little more accurate for those guys, for the drivers, because it's not it's a regular concrete outside and you have the outside elements and everything, so they'll come up and do that sometimes too.
Yeah, that's
but
cool.
Mostly just before the season. Oh, so sorry.
No, it's kind of following up with that. And, Joe kind of keeps asking about, during a normal season and, prior to 2020, but I do kind of want to ask about what it was like this season. Cause I feel like at the end of the year, it was something that was well noted, how it was a successful season. And we're kind of in that realm in college sports now where we're going through our season, trying to do things safely, do things very differently. What do you think was the biggest challenge for you, or what maybe were some positive takeaways from the season and the restrictions?
So I think NASCAR did a great job with getting us races and getting all of our races in for the year, which was more than most professional sports, I think. It's incredible we were able to run all of our races, trucks, Xfinity, and Cup in that condensed amount of time. I think one of the biggest challenges was, I think it was strange not having fans at the track. That's for one thing. And usually when there are people up in the stands, they can get you really hyped up, and it's an added element that's really, really cool. And we felt that a little bit at Bristol when I think they had 20% capacity, 30% capacity. So that was really cool. That was one of the big challenges, was just, it was so empty. It was just different. I think wearing masks was a little bit of a challenge too, just because you're out in the heat. I mean, you're at Homestead in the end of June and 110 degree. I think it felt like 110 degrees and super humid and everything. Now that was a little bit of a challenge. Now it might not have been the mask itself, it might have just been the heat and the fire suits, but I think that was interesting. But I think some of the good takeaways were that NASCAR was able to pivot during a very difficult time and figure out their mask situation. I tell you, they did a great job with getting us in and out of the track every week, because we had our time slots where we would go in, where we check in. We barely ever had to wait through our check-in lines, through our temperature checks, our vehicle checks, whatever. They made it so smooth and streamlined just from the very beginning when we went to Darlington in the middle of May. I think they did an awesome job with that.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I felt inspired myself, right? Because it's, we're in the realm of trying to make that stuff work. And it's definitely what made me a big fan. And it was cool to see how that worked throughout the season, especially when you see how many people, I think people probably just see it as the drivers are the ones that have to stay safe and are able to race. But talking about you all and the immense amount of teammates that they have behind the scene there, it was cool. It was definitely really cool to see. I think kind of with that too, it was, for us, I mean, and especially for me being new to it, everything's so zoomed in on the cars, right? That don't notice the fans being gone as much as you do in other sports. I mean, I'm a big Nationals baseball fan. I know your cousin is as well. We talked about Nats quite a bit, and I couldn't even watch baseball this summer. It just felt so strange with empty stadiums. But I guess I'm from the fan side. It was still pretty exciting to watch, even though there were no fans out there.
Yeah, at least you had something to watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we were even watching iRacing. It didn't matter. We just wanted to see something, and just pick up on that. The broadcasting side has been helpful on this end too. Just watching the way that they handled interviews and doing Zoom calls and things of that nature. And now that's what we do all the time. So it was really, really neat how NASCAR was able to take a very unknown and be the first to put themselves out there and figure out how to do it, and certainly added some more fans to the list for themselves. Now, I want to talk about being a fan, because that's what you were for first and foremost. That's what we are. We're not in the realm of driving yet until I get my 5 minutes at Charlotte next June with Richard Petty and his driving school. But you mentioned one particular event in the form that you sent back, and that was the infamous 1999 Bristol night race. The 3 and Labonte, and it didn't end well for the Kellogg's car. First question is, were you at that race? Secondly, what was it growing up that attracted you to Earnhardt so much?
All right, so I was at that race.
That
was was it 99? So it was my 9th birthday present to be able to go down there. So I was in, I guess you recommend 1 and 2. I think we were in turn 4 or turn 3. So we had we could see it. We were a little bit more removed from it, but we could see it. So that's imprinted in my brain, just watching the smoke go up and seeing the 5 go around. So the interesting part is that as a kid, I was a Jeff Gordon fan. My dad was a huge Dale Earnhardt guy, like one of the diehards. So naturally, I wanted to go rebel a little bit and be against him. So I went with the rainbow-colored 24 car, who won a lot, and I got to be really happy about that most of the time as a kid, because 97, 98, those were 2 big championship years. I was still pretty young in 95, I guess, but I don't know, man. It just I really got to be RCR, big RCR guy, kind of when Harvick started coming around, and kind of even I was DEI too when Junior went to the 8 car. So I think that the blue collar aspect of RCR and kind of how I grew up around construction guys when I was a little kid and a little small town Luray, it just kind of fits. It's just kind of that blue collar attitude and just hardworking people. And Dale Earnhardt symbolized all of that. He came from nothing and still worked on his farm during the week and said that was his real job, and just got the race cars on the weekend for fun, man. That's pretty cool. And I'm coming from some rural agricultural town in Blue Ridge Mountains. That's pretty cool. And I think it just kind of stayed with me probably from about 10 years old on. Just it humbles you and kind of keeps you on a level plane too, and just kind of reminds you where your roots are. So I think that really what sticks with me with Dale, and just how he treated people, and how he didn't back down either. I thought that was really cool too. That's still sticks. We have a few of his cars down here in the pit department. It's just cool to be able to look over at them and just kind of remind yourself, just don't quit, never quit.
Wow.
That's what I really wanted to get to next was, you're working at RCR, that history with Earnhardt. Were there chills the first time you walked in that building and you saw his cars, let alone even on Austin's car? Like the 3 is the same font, so it's still really cool to see that. What was that experience like?
Yeah, so I think we came down here to the museum to check it out maybe in 2010 or so. So that was before Austin. That was before they brought Austin back with the 3. So that was really cool, just getting to walk into the museum and see that blue and yellow Wrangler 3 86 and 87 car sitting right in front of you. That just kind of gives you chills. So that was a really cool experience, and just be able to walk through the museum. And we got to, when when they took the Daytona car, actually both Daytona cars, when they took Dale's 98 Daytona car down to the Hall of Fame last year, we got to help push it out of the museum. And that was a really cool experience. I mean, that's a once in a lifetime. That car hasn't moved since they put it in the museum. And being able to push that car out of there, that was a very, very special moment.
I got a better final question then, because my folks live out near Texas Motor Speedway now, so you get to go out there.
Yeah, well, we spent about a full month out there earlier this year, so.
Oh gosh, yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. It's about 5 days, but
I'm sure it felt like more like a year, and waiting
Yeah.
out the rain and waiting all that in Texas of all places. Did you get good brisket while you were out there? Did they feed
we did.
you well?
I think we went to a couple of brisket places over the time, and it was delicious. Absolutely loved it. If we had to be stuck anywhere, I'm happy it was Texas, because there's plenty of stuff to do out there.
Definitely, right next to a Buc-ee's, right there next to Texas Motor Speedway,
Mhm.
and 407 Barbecue. That's the place my folks love, right there next to one exit up from there on 35. So those are my favorite places. I've seen an IndyCar race there. I'm excited to get out for a NASCAR race, hopefully pretty soon.
Indy cars are cool to watch around there. We got to watch them qualify before the truck race last year, and they were hauling. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was a really cool experience to get to do that. So I appreciate your time, JP. I know you got a busy schedule, and really appreciate you doing this and talking to us and letting us be fans.
Yeah, man. Thank you all for having me on. Just thankful for my wife, Kelsey, for raising my hand.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Hopefully we can do this again, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Happy to talk to y'all. Nice to meet y'all.